Hey everyone, and welcome to another tips and tricks video. If you didn't watch our first video, be sure to take a look at that too so you don't miss any useful tips. Some of these tips are basic things you may not know as a first time or returning player, and some may be a little bit more obscure that even long-time players are finding out for the first time. Either way, we hope you learned some new things today.
We're going to start off with some tips related to skilling. If you didn't already know, you can take a look at daily challenges by going to your adventure tab, the same place that you find your quests. Here you'll see up to 5 different challenges you can do for XP and treasure hunter keys. If you keep up with these every day, then they're a great way to get experience, but sometimes you can get a challenge and skill that you don't want.
You could just re-roll and try to get something better, but something you could also do is block challenges for skills you're already maxed in. To do this, go to Berthorpe and head south until you see Challenge Mistress Farah. Talk to her and choose I want to toggle max challenges to pull up a menu. Here, you can turn off the challenges for skills you've maxed but don't want XP for anymore. The only downside is that if a skill can go up to 120, you'll need to reach 120 before you can block it. Still, it's a useful way to manage your daily challenges.
A lot of the time when you're making potions or training some other artisan skill, your inventory fills up fast with all the other ingredients you'll need. Sometimes you'll only need 2 ingredients, but other times you'll need up to 6 or even 7 just to make one thing. With your tiny inventory, you'd only be able to make 4 potions at a time, which is inconvenient and inefficient when you want to make hundreds of them. If you can use a Beast of Burden, they're going to greatly improve your training for herbalore, crafting, fire making, fletching, and much more. Just summon your familiar and load them up with items.
When you're putting in items to make potions, it's helpful to add in all of the ingredients for one potion at a time, instead of taking all of one, and then all of the other, and so on. Once you do that, click and hold on your familiar options icon and drag it over to your action bar somewhere. Then right-click on the familiar icon and choose Select Follower Interaction. In the first column under Familiar, make sure you have the Take BOB option selected. Now you're ready to brew some potions or make items. As you're making them, keep clicking on your Beast of Burden button to withdraw the ingredients from them. By putting in the items for one potion at a time, you'll make sure you take enough ingredients to make at least one more potion.
Just be sure to take from your familiar before you run out of items in your inventory, or else you'll have to start up the process again. You can do this kind of setup with fletching bows or crafting armors as well. Setting up your crafting process like this might not seem like it'll make a big difference since you only end up making a couple more without a Beast of Burden, but when you're working on making batches of hundreds of items, it's definitely going to make a big difference.
I also want to talk a bit more about combination potions. When you get to the level where you can start making overloads, you would want to conserve as much as possible since they are very useful for combat, but they can be expensive to make. This can be done by creating combination potions, like the ones I was making earlier. To make a Holy Overload, you would need a 4-dose Overload potion along with a 4-dose Prayer Renewal. But when you make the Holy Overload, it actually produces a 6-dose potion. That means you're getting a whole 2 extra doses of Overload when you make these kinds of combination potions. They do use up a crystal flask as an extra cost, but the GP you spend on a flask is easily cheaper than what you would spend on making 2 doses of an Overload.
Because of this, it is definitely more beneficial to change your overload into some kind of combination potion. Even if you're not at the herbalore level to make these higher level potions, you can always use a pulse core boost to raise your level to a point where you can make them.
If you train summoning, you know you go through spirit shards super fast and can run out in only a few trips. Normally in RS3, buying items in the shops is going to be cheaper than buying off of the GE. But for spirit shards, it's actually cheaper to buy off the GE. The shop price for shards is 25 coins each, whereas the GE price ranges from 22 to 24 coins.
You may think that a 1 coin difference isn't going to mean anything, but when you're buying hundreds and thousands of these shards throughout your training, it's definitely going to be saving you a lot of money. You can save millions of GPs from buying it off the GE instead of the shops. The only downside to this is, like everything else on the GE, spirit shards do have a buy limit. You can only buy 10,000 shards every 4 hours, so just plan ahead of time if you need to buy a lot of shards to train with them.
Now let's get into some tips for combat. If you have access to War's Retreat, you should know that you can use the portals here to go to bosses. Something you probably didn't know though is that you can right-click on the portal to set the arrival point. You can't do this for every boss, but some bosses are automatically set to bring you to a location that's a little further away from the boss room, like how Araxi teleports you outside the cave. Instead of running through the cave and making some jumps to get to the end, you can set the arrival point to be right next to the boss entrance. Not only does it make your trip a bit faster, but it also makes it easier to keep your adrenaline. It doesn't cost anything to change this, so whenever you try a new boss, check to see if it has another arrival point you can change it to.
If you're bringing along a spring cleaner as you PVM, it becomes more useful as it gets upgraded. You can use your springs to upgrade it, but you're actually better off not doing that. Even if you don't upgrade your spring cleaner manually, it actually still upgrades on its own as it gets used. So don't waste your springs on upgrading, just save them to charge up your spring cleaner. I really wish I knew this starting off because I wasted a lot of springs upgrading it when I could have just been using it normally.
When you're getting combat XP, you're initially going to get XP for whatever style you're using, along with defense. If you're bouncing around to different combat styles, your defense is going to level up much faster than the other skills since it's constantly getting XP no matter which style you choose. You can change this though by going into your settings, looking under Combat and Action Bar, and clicking on Combat XP. Here, you can unselect the Defense XP box for whichever style you want to get more XP in. You can't turn off Constitution XP, but if you want to level up a certain combat style faster, just check off the defense to do that. You could also do it the other way around if you want. And if you want to level up attack or strength faster than the other, you can do that too.
Now, let's look at some random but useful tips. When you click to look at your auras, the menu shows pictures for all of the auras that you have. Now, this setup may work for some people, but for me, I have a hard time matching the pictures with the auras. So when I'm looking for the one I want, it takes me a second to find it, and usually I end up hovering over most of them until I find the one that I want. But instead of that, you can click on the gear and change it to show you a list view. So now, when you save it, you can see all the names quickly and just find the one that you want.
In the same menu, you can also choose to hide the Dismiss Aura warning. This can come in handy because sometimes when you're in combat, you want to change the aura you have active. If you try to deactivate it though, it can be a bit hard to confirm it because combat closes the window. So by turning that warning off, you can just deactivate it immediately with no snags. You can also favorite the auras you use a lot of, so you can easily right-click on the aura slot to activate it there.
When you start the game off, your action bar already has some keys bound to it. You have some basic ones like 1 through 0, the dash sign, and the equal sign, but you can change those and add even more hotkeys. Right-click on the box in the action bar and select Customize Keybind, then just type in the keybind that you want. You can even do combinations like Alt, Control, or Shift with a key to increase the amount of hotkeys that you have. The more you PVM, the more abilities you want to use, so if you plan on doing a lot of PVM in the future, it's a good idea to get those hotkeys set up earlier so that you start getting used to them.
And the last tip we'll leave you off with is to keep an eye out for items that can be added to your tool belt. A lot of skilling tools can be added to it, like pickaxes and mattocks, but there are some items you may not initially think can be put on. Unique items like insect repellent, some artifacts, herbicide, bone crusher, charming imp, and much more can all be added to your tool belt. When you come across a new tool or item, just right-click it to see if it can be added on.
This will save you some effort when you need to do PVM, quests, or even skilling. If you have a steel keyring, you can also put that on your tool belt and add a bunch of different keys so that you can use them in the future without having to worry about taking them out. But sometimes you will need additional requirements to add something to your tool belt, like the Bone Crusher or Charming Imp, which required you have Slayer points.
Alright, we hope you found some useful tips in this video. If you did, it would be great if you gave it a like. More videos like this will come out in the future, so be sure to subscribe so you don't miss them. If there are other tips or tricks you found out and wish you knew earlier, let me know in the comments.
And a special thanks to our Patreons for all the support you've been showing us. And thanks for watching, and we'll see you later.
Bye!
Bye.